Today on Total Maine, voter ID. It could be on your ballot next fall. Thousands of signatures gathered for a proposal already seeing intense pushback. And red flag referendum, another polarizing petition effort. What both sides are saying about this latest push for an extreme risk protection order. Plus, we go in the arena. The election day dust has settled. Our expert panel asks, what's next?
Hey, good Sunday and welcome to Total Maine. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Terry Stackhouse. When you voted earlier this month at the polls, you may have noticed the signature gathering effort for a law that would require voter ID. Supporters say they gathered enough valid signatures to get it on the ballot next year. But opponents are already pushing back, claiming that the plan would make it harder for some registered voters to cast their ballots. Today, we're taking a closer look at this issue, speaking with influential Republican State Representative Laura Libby, a key leader on the issue, and Anna Keller, the executive director of the League of Women Voters, an organization strongly opposed. Do you feel as though that this would prevent voter impersonation? Is that a problem as you see it on Election Day?
You know, I see it as a way to strengthen our elections here in Maine, and that has gotten really strong support from folks on both sides of the aisle. This is a bipartisan issue. Most Mainers support voter ID. Who's opposed to strengthening Maine elections?
The Voter ID for Me initiative claims to have gathered more than 125,000 signatures on Election Day alone, well over the number required to get on the ballot. If approved, it would require voters to present photographic identification, and for voters without a driver's license, it would direct the Secretary of State to issue free non-driver ID cards. For absentee voters, it would require a written application with an ID number or a copy of the ID. State Rep. Laura Libby says it's needed because Augusta lawmakers, in her view, have failed to act on overwhelming support.
This is legislation that's been introduced in the Maine legislature time and time again over the last decade, and yet the Democrats in Augusta have refused to pass it. I believe that voter ID being law in Maine is the will of Maine people, and if the legislature is not willing to pass that legislation, I think we're seeing pretty clearly here that Maine people will get the job done for them.
It's opposed by groups including the League of Women Voters. That organization says, in combination with the ineffectiveness of voter photo ID laws at preventing the rare instances of voter fraud, the more likely results of voter photo ID laws are voter suppression and reduced turnout among vulnerable populations. The executive director of the Maine chapter, Anna Keller, says their organization is prepared to fight against the effort.
There's a lot of pieces to it that will actually make it harder for eligible Maine voters to be able to cast their ballot. And that's where our concern is. It's really important that all Mainers, regardless of their political party, have the right to vote and have the right to vote in secure elections.
According to the group, Maine is one of 16 states that does not require a picture ID or proof of citizenship to vote.
It would make it harder for seniors and rural voters to be able to vote. And what's important for people to know about it is that it's not just voter ID. There are also measures that would make it harder to absentee vote. It would mean you couldn't request a ballot over the phone. It would make it harder for someone to help return a ballot.
An October poll released by Colby College shows more than a third of Mainers distrust the integrity of the presidential election. 35 disagree that their vote will be counted accurately. But Keller doesn't think this type of requirement would boost voter confidence.
All of these pieces in combination are measures that could conceivably make the election more secure, but it's secure at the cost of leaving out eligible voters.
Libby expects to turn in signatures, which supporters say were collected from more than 200 locations on Election Day, to the Secretary of State's office early next year, with the hope of putting the question on the November 2025 ballot.
I think that there'll probably be people that look at this proposal and then say, where is the evidence that fraud is occurring for that in-person voting? Is there fraud that you're aware of in that format where somebody falsely represents themselves, that this legislation would prevent that from happening in the future?
You know, the real question to me is, how can we best strengthen Maine elections and, as you said, make Mainers confident that their vote counts?
Also looking ahead to 2025 is the Maine Gun Safety Coalition. They're working on a ballot question to create a red flag law. As Jackie Muddy reports, if approved, Maine would join 21 other states that already have adopted a similar policy.
The Maine Gun Safety Coalition is working to collect signatures to put an extreme risk protection order or a red flag law on the ballot for Maine voters. The organization says the legislature hasn't done enough to implement common sense gun laws, so they are taking it to a citizens' referendum.
The vast majority of Mainers want common sense measures in place to prevent gun violence, and the legislators had not yet caught up with where the population was.
Nicole Palmer is the executive director of the Maine Gun Safety Coalition. Her organization is collecting signatures for a red flag law citizens referendum. Maine currently has a yellow flag law that was strengthened in the wake of the Lewiston shooting to allow law enforcement officers to get a warrant signed by a judge in an unusual circumstance so that person can be taken into protective custody. Palmer says that law doesn't go far enough because families can't trigger the law.
The extreme risk protection order does empower families. It empowers families to go directly to the court if they believe that their loved one is in crisis and poses a threat.
The other side is misleading the public. Families can participate in Maine's yellow flag process.
That's David Trahan, executive director of the Maine Sportsmen's Alliance. According to Maine state law, the yellow flag law allows a family member or loved one to notify law enforcement if they believe someone is a threat to themselves or others. Then law enforcement can continue the process of removing weapons from the home. But a red flag law would allow family members to bring their concerns right to a judge in the same way the state's protection from abuse order is handled. So family involvement is allowed in both versions of an extreme risk protection order. Trahan disagrees with the Gun Safety Coalition. He says the yellow flag law the state has is more effective than the red flag law.
Our law is far more effective, and it will actually be dangerous to replace it or to supplant it with a weaker law.
The Maine Gun Safety Coalition has collected 60,000 signatures already, but it needs 67,682 signatures before it can appear on a statewide ballot. Palmer tells me she hopes to collect 75,000 signatures. In Augusta, I'm Jackie Mundry for Maine's Total Coverage.
There is much more ahead this Sunday, including helping Maine mothers. We're going to talk to the leader of a local nonprofit about their minimum basic income pilot program, which is now expanding. But first, from ballot initiatives to needle exchange programs, we break down this week in politics with the hosts of our In the Arena podcast. That's when Total Maine continues. Does it get any more Maine than this? Check out that gorgeous sunrise over Cadillac Mountain in Acadia National Park. Some beautiful images there, courtesy of our Total Maine photojournalist Izzy Allers. Now, on Election Day, when you visited your polling location, you may have been asked by some volunteers to sign on to a petition to put something before voters next time around when you head to the polls. We're going to talk about a couple of these initiatives here now that we're in the arena. So good to see the three of you.
I was one of those volunteers, by the way.
Is that right?
I was.
What precinct were you at?
I was in Westbrook all day. Yeah, it's great.
So let's start by talking about the voter ID requirement. This is a controversial one.
And it's one that, Phil, it never goes away.
No, and I think it's one of those that will surprise the insiders, so to speak. I think the appetite for voter ID crosses geographics, party affiliations, gender. I think you're going to see, if this gets on the ballot, it's going to pass overwhelmingly.
Yeah, which would be unfortunate because that means that it probably would reduce the voter turnout that we'd have on Election Day. It is very easy to explain, but the implications of it are significant. So, but yes, they certainly got a lot of signatures. I was sitting at a table right next to them gathering signatures on the other initiative, and they got just as many people at their table as we did ours.
If it's on the ballot next year, it's an off-year election, so we'll be focusing a lot on that.
We're also talking about the red flag proposal as well. I know that's something you know quite a lot about. Similarly, this is also a divisive issue.
Yes, you've been gathering signatures, and it means a lot to you. What do you think about its prospects?
Yeah, full disclosure, my partner is actually running that campaign, so that's why I had to volunteer on Election Day to gather signatures. So Yeah, I mean, I think, again, kind of like what Phil was saying, this is something where the people are very supportive. The red flag law basically says that a family member would have the opportunity to go directly to court to be able to have guns removed from somebody who's a danger to themselves or to somebody else. You currently can't do that under the yellow flag law. And I think Maine people very much recognize after Lewiston, a red flag law could have prevented it. We need to have it in place. So I think it will be popular.
Yeah, I concur with Ethan. I think if it gets on the ballot, it will be very successful. But I think it's also worth pointing out, Terry, that under Maine's Constitution, the legislature doesn't have to send these petitions out to the voters. Exactly. They could adopt them into law as they are presented.
Interesting. We're going to be watching that for sure once they return to session. On the podcast this week, you're playing a game of In Their Shoes. What would you do? Kind of fun to pretend if you're President-elect Donald Trump, I would imagine, especially for Ethan, I'm sure.
Oh, boy.
But offshore wind, this has been a divisive issue for many reasons. Proponents of clean energy, lobstermen and lobstering families feel a certain way. What do you do if you're the president-elect?
And Phil, it's important because the Maine legislature has expressed support for this offshore wind project to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and the University of Maine has been very innovative in technology that they want to deploy for offshore wind. So my hope is that they let this project go forward and use it as an incubator, or whether or not this is something we can do on a grand scale and enable our fisheries to survive as well.
President Strimling concur?
Well, as I said on the podcast, he's got a very rational response for what Donald Trump might do, because from everything we've seen, he is never a rational man. But, I hope that he allows it to go forward. There is, states have the right to regulate their own waters, to try to build the renewable energy they want. It's good for the environment. If he, to the winner goes the spoils, I get that. And if he wants to look at projects that are not in the works, he should do that, but he should let this happen.
Sanford City Council also this week, they moved to shift their policy as it relates to distributing hypodermic needles in the interest of harm reduction to go back to a one-to-one model. That failed in Portland, but the Sanford City Council decided to implement it.
Yeah, the policy has been, Ethan, one needle gets you up to 100 back. Why is that important?
Well, it's important to try to stop and prevent the spread of infectious disease. It also really helps people get into the programs that they need. When you have a one-to-one exchange, it's simply not enough. You end up, unfortunately, exchanging needles and more people get sick and disease can spread within your community. So do we need to deal with the litter? Of course. And what Portland did, which I think was brilliant, is they created an exchange. It basically said, if you bring a needle in, we're going to give you 5 cents, just like our bottle law.
Phil, if it were your call, what would you do?
I compliment the city of Sanford. I think a one-to-one exchange is appropriate. Remember, these are illegal drugs that people are injecting into their systems. They shouldn't be doing it in the first place. We know their future is not bright with this behavior. So my view is let's help them get away from this rather than make it easier for them to use it.
In this new school year, some school districts have announced that they're going to be reducing or doing away altogether with snow days. School districts prove the concept that they can do remote learning. Some tough decisions here.
Sorry for all the kids watching, is that there's something magical, Ethan, about having that unexpected day off.
I know. I want to know how Terry feels about this, because he's got some kids that might have to have those snow days. But yeah, I'm saying to myself, look, I'll let the kids have the snow days because they're always fun, number one. I know it's hard on the parents, but the more important educational piece is we know remote learning is not as good as in the classroom learning. So taking away a full classroom day and getting half a day of remote learning, that's not an equal exchange.
But I think Phil wants to get out of school on time in May or June. Yeah.
So what you're saying is you're going to have a day off in February, but you're going to spend 3 or 4 more days in June in the classroom. This technology is before us. It has proven to be effective. I believe we can start the school year and end the school year according to the schedule.
Mr. Superintendent, he's like, leave him home.
It's kind of a psychological
He's got
test,
vacation
right?
plans.
Do you want the day off now?
But Terry, we want to know, how do you feel with young kids who might get those snow days?
It's tough because there are days where it could be a snow day for the kids, but the parents have to go into work, and then so you have a childcare mess to deal with too. But enough of my problems, right?
Fair enough.
Well, thank you so much to the three of you for coming in. Remember, new episodes of In the Arena drop every Thursday. You can watch at our website, WMTW.com, or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I went through a lot of what the moms on the program went through, and what they have right now is what I wish I had at that time. It hits somewhere so close that I want to keep it going for the rest of the moms.
One mother involved in a minimum basic income pilot program organized by the Maine Quality Housing Coalition. It's called Project Home Trust. The program provided 20 low-income single mothers in Maine with $1,000 payments each month. With the second program now underway, the nonprofit's executive director, Victoria Morales, joins us in studio. And we're talking about Project Home Trust right now. We have the full 24-page report here. Victoria, I'm so glad that you're joining us in studio today. This is a really exciting study and some great data here that I want to ask you about. And we're going to show you on the screen here. The survey asked, this is at the outset for the 20 mothers that are participating in this. They were asked, how well are you doing financially these days? Only 5 to 6% were doing okay or living comfortably. But 1 year later, response is dramatically different, according to your report. Over half of the participants, 53%, said that they were doing okay or better. 68% reported some level of improvement. So what does that tell you about how effective these $1,000 payments are for them?
It's incredible, Terry. This is the program that we designed with the moms, and this is what they told us they needed. And so we were hopeful that this is the kind of result that we would see. And throughout the year of the programming, we saw them be more hopeful. We saw them take control of their lives, plan for their finances, plan for their kids' lives. We saw their children reporting happiness beyond numbers that we could have ever imagined. So what it really tells us is that folks need to have cash. Mm-hmm. And what we also know is with this program, because there are financial assistance programs out there, let's be honest, we've had them for many years, but they're very restrictive in what you can spend things on, when you have to spend them on, the priorities of that, and then you have to report on a regular basis with receipts of what you're doing. So there's a lot of shame involved in that kind of programming, and what we're trying to show with this program is you don't need that, and it's actually not helpful for folks. Mm-hmm. And with these moms, and what they told us when we started was, look, my finances change every month. I may need to repair my car. I may need to do a grocery shopping. I may need to buy cleats for my kid, to play soccer. So if you have this very restrictive formula for how I'm supposed to spend things, I'm actually not going to be able to get ahead.
Yeah, I've read about one example, too, of a mother that through a different assistance program was reprimanded for spending something like $7 on an ice cream at the request of her child. And that must be very difficult as a parent to feel as though you're that restricted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, they're parents and they know their kids. And we are all of those of us who are parents, we know that sometimes you have to buy an ice cream for your kid, and that's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. How do you hope this, so now you're onto the second cohort with a larger group of mothers and more children involved. When all of this data is collected, how do you hope that it's going to be used at the state level or even beyond that?
Yeah, great point. And that's why we're robustly evaluating this. It is, just to be clear, it's 20 moms again and 38 children. So the last time we had 33 children. What we really hope to show is that we can do financial assistance programming differently. We can trust that people, particularly single moms in these programs, and we have the data to show it, they're going to use the money in a way that best meets their needs, best meets their kids' needs. Their kids are going to do better in school. The moms are going to do better financially. When we looked across the board, every metric improved for these moms dramatically.
Right.
Their mental health, their prospects towards their future, towards their financial future. 95% of them stayed stably housed. I mean, these are all critical social determinants of health that are necessary for families to thrive.
There has been some critiquing, aside from your program at a national level, about the effectiveness of universal basic income and whether or not it negatively impacts work patterns, whether recipients are willing to enter the workforce. And your data show the participants that received the monthly payments actually didn't reduce their work hours. They increased them slightly from 31.7 hours per week at the outset to 36.5 at the end of program, and their median earnings rose as well.
Right. So the data just doesn't show that. Mm-hmm. And I think what's really critical too is that programs like this value time. They value each mom's time so that maybe she doesn't have to take that third job. She can spend that time with her kids after school. She can get them ready for school in the morning. She can go and watch them do gymnastics or do that sport that they've been wanting to do. And that valuable time with their family will bear out in the future for that child's life. This is a 2-generational approach.
A selfless donation for the future. When Total Maine returns, Connor Clement introduces us to a Bangor football player aiming to make the sport safer long after his playing days are over. Welcome back. Concussions and concerns in football. These have grown over the year with studies highlighting potential serious long-term health risks. One high school senior from Bangor is taking action by pledging to donate his brain to research aimed at improving safety in the sport that he loves. Connor Clement sat down with him and his dad to discuss that decision.
Long after his playing days are over, Finn Parker Cummings hopes to make a lasting, game-changing impact on the sport he loves.
What can I do to help the football community progress in science and be safer? And it came to my mind one day. I was like, maybe I should just donate my brain.
That's exactly what Finn has pledged to do. When he dies, his brain will go to the University of Pittsburgh's National Sports Brain Bank. He's the youngest person ever to make this commitment.
I've had my fair share of concussions, and I just like to be able to protect people and maybe try to clarify some science around it.
Finn's parents support his decision. His father, who's a neuroscientist, wasn't exactly thrilled years ago when Finn told him he wanted to play football.
I didn't want him to play. I thought it was like anything with a young child, it would just be a fad and go away, and then it became a part of his life.
Peter and Sarah Cummings decided to sit down and look at the research rather than headlines, which changed their view on the sport and its safety.
That led to me, writing this op-ed for Yahoo Sports about why I let him play football.
Finn's love of the game inspired his dad to learn more about it. The two started traveling the country, working with USA Football and Pop Warner to improve rules and safety.
Football has done more to improve and promote safety than probably any other sport, and it should be the role model on how sports develop safety policies.
Experiences with Finn charted a new course for Dr. Cummings' career. He helped former NFL player and broadcaster Merrill Hodge write a book about what they believe is misleading information on concussions and CTE.
Without him and his passion for that sport, I certainly wouldn't have the life that I have, and I owe him a lot for the great things that have happened to me.
Finn's ultimate hope is to continue improving the game's safety. He feels his donation will advance the university's research on traumatic brain injuries with the goal of protecting future players, from kids like himself to professional athletes like Patriots quarterback Drake May, who was recently sidelined due to a concussion.
If I can help prevent that and make sure a little kid who's just discovering football can pick up a helmet, put it on, and be safe and play and love it, and maybe one day have a chance to play in college or the NFL, I would 100% love to do that.
Finn will undergo yearly evaluations with the National Sports Brain Bank for the rest of his life. A spokesperson said they're deeply thankful for Finn's selfless pledge. They said that it will bring more attention to this issue, and they hope that others will see Finn's story and consider donating. Reporting in Bangor, Connor Clement for Maine's Total Coverage.
And that is going to do it for this week's edition of Total Maine. I'm Terry Stackhouse. Thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday here with us. Going to leave you this weekend with our Sky 8 drone giving us some views from high above the Oxford County town of Bethel. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We will see you right back here next Sunday for another edition of Total Maine.